For a once-in-a-lifetime experience, travelers venture into the wilderness to catch a glimpse of the deadliest predator in the north in a custom-built polar bear viewing machine.
Turns quite a few faces, I'll tell you.
In the freezing conditions of the Canadian Arctic, one aircraft battles extreme terrain to be the lifeline for remote communities in this frozen wilderness.
It's not too many planes that can do the job this plane does.
And on a major train line in the mountains of Norway, a mammoth snow removal machine prevents major catastrophe by keeping the tracks clear and the rails free of ice.
When you're moving 53 tons of raw steel, you feel like a champion.
Wherever frozen wilderness dominates the land, wherever snow and ice are relentless, and wherever exposure to the elements is a matter of life and death, human survival depends upon extreme ice machines. Sitting on the shores of the Hudson Bay lays the town of Churchill, Manitoba, best known for its wild neighbors that have transformed Churchill into a popular polar tourist destination. In the 1970s, people began arriving at this Arctic outpost in hopes of getting a closer encounter with polar bears. The only problem: polar bears are deadly predators that humans should not get near. One local mastermind came up with a solution. Enter the Polar Rover, a 55-foot, all-terrain polar bear observation vehicle. In Churchill, it's the only safe way to take a journey out on the Arctic tundra to experience polar bears in their natural habitat.
While you are on the tundra, should we have the opportunity to get a nice close encounter, please make sure that you keep everything inside the cabin. Any dangly bits that you'd like to take home with you, camera straps, scarves, heads, arms, make sure that you're always aware of that stuff.
This fleet of 12 Polar Rovers is warm, safe, and secure, but they've evolved over the years, all with the goal of safely transporting tourists in search of polar bears roaming the Arctic tundra. The Polar Rover is the brainchild of Don Wachowski. Don's polar bear business started in 1989. The initial designs were far simpler and much less safe. The first model was an old jacked-up school bus.
A vehicle we called Old Blue, which was a shuttle bus, and we put it up on a big four-wheel drive chassis and rolled around out there with it and got interest from photographers and stuff. And then it spun into larger groups.
The yard outside Don's shop is home to a collection of his past designs, including an early model with an old school bus welded on top of an army truck chassis. Another four-wheel drive rover sits at the end of his driveway as a symbol of how far the Polar Rover has evolved.
The ones that were built out of the old school bus chassis stuff we started with originally, they really didn't cut it out there. You were spending a lot of time crawling around underneath fixing things and getting them unstuck and all that kind of stuff, and that really don't happen anymore.
30 years later, and that original design for Old Blue has evolved into the custom-made Polar Rover. At his machine workshop in Winnipeg, the current model of the Polar Rover begins its life as an Oshkosh Striker, a specialized aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle. Once decommissioned, Don and his team transform it by removing the top of the former fire truck and hand building the Polar Rover from the chassis up. One axle is removed to reduce it from an 8-wheel to a 6-wheel vehicle. Then, a custom-built cabin, complete with an open-air viewing deck, is constructed on top.
We get rid of one axle because we don't need the 8-wheel drive. They're considerably heavier. The fire trucks, they got 6,000-gallon water tanks on them. These bodies are entirely constructed out of aluminum, so we have a pretty light, like a rolling chassis, weighs 15 ton. Then we put our frames together with our own suspension and stuff. We just come up with a design and we come up with a way of building them, and certain parts are used, so we don't really have to source a whole bunch of different parts. Well, because the axles can be locked and unlocked, you can have a positive 6-wheel drive axle lockup where all wheels have to spin. And you throw a switch and it becomes like a normal differential where your wheels aren't tilling up the ground as much, and it rolls over top of it fairly flat, even when you turn. Then we put a smaller diesel engine in to drive this thing. We've got a real heavy gear reduction in it, so we're able to accomplish that with a smaller, like a 250 horse diesels, and we're rolling around out there for 10, 12 gallons of fuel a day. We're not out there to race around, we're out there to give a nice ride and kind of make things comfortable for people. It's not important for me to have great big diesels that'll do 50 miles an hour.
Speed is not the priority for the Polar Rovers. Safety and reliability are the most important concerns. And the safest way to get the Polar Rovers from the workshop where they're brought to life and serviced to polar bear country is a 625-mile journey from Winnipeg to Churchill by ship, air, or rail. There are no roads.
We build the equipment right there in the city, and we're able to load them on a train not far from there and send them on up here.
In their lifetime, these vehicles will only ever take a very short trip on pavement.
We got to go up the street and around the corner and go up to load it on the train. I drove it down the street in Winnipeg, and it turns quite a few faces, I'll tell you. Now, the length of this is 55 feet, and it stands at 13 foot 6 inches to the top of the roof. Keeps people out of reach of the bears, keeps the bears safe and the people safe, so we don't have to worry about somebody reaching out and touching or getting grabbed by a bear or anything like that. So that's the main reason it's that high. Body's 100% aluminum. It's all square tubing construction.
Because of this unique and rough terrain, there must be adequate clearance around all of the tires to allow for turning and flexing of the body.
We run 8 to 10 pounds of pressure in the tires. That'd be a cold pressure, and the reason why is so we can, when you run over rocks and stuff like that, they'll implode into the tire and smoothen out the ride quite a bit, take a lot of stress off the drive component. There's about 4.5 pounds per square inch for this vehicle, and it's weighing in at 15 ton.
The lower tire pressure results in a more comfortable ride and allows the vehicle to safely travel over deep snowdrifts and ice.
A decommissioned fire truck, we buy them up because it makes it a lot more affordable to have a heavy axle system and stuff like that to build this equipment.
And for the Polar Rover, a heavy axle system is crucial.
They take a lot of punishment, so they're ideal for what we're doing. So we take one axle out and then we redesign the whole front end system because it's got a single axle now, and so you have to have stabilizers for your axle to prevent things from breaking and moving around. The springs are a radius leaf spring, so basically you have one leaf that's holding your axle from moving backwards, and that's the idea of the stabilizers you see in the front. The back suspension system's a walking beam suspension, so basically there's this walks over top of it, so the wheels move on a center axis, and basically as the wheel rolls over something, the back will drop down, and then it'll come back up, and the front will drop down as you roll over it, so it takes the balance out of the vehicle. This is a 7.5-inch solid Teflon bushing, made for the cold. Basically, it slides up and down in that cup. If you consider the length of this vehicle and the amount of flex that you're getting going through the holes, like from front to back, this thing can rotate essentially like a corkscrew, 7 to 10 inches. What we came up with is a Teflon bushing in aluminum design. It allows the frame to flex under the body without breaking the body apart. Basically, if you had the system all anchored solid, it would basically twist itself right apart.
The Teflon allows the frame to slide easily up and down with no lubrication, limiting the amount of maintenance needed.
This is an ice guard to prevent, when you're going through ice and stuff, to prevent it from coming up and shearing off hoses and damaging steering cylinders and stuff like that. Well, I've been doing it for 30 years, so I mean, it's a school of hard knocks. Basically, you learn what's gonna break, why it's gonna break, and how you're gonna fix that problem.
And if seeing the polar bears in person isn't enough, Don's dreamed up an even more immersive experience that is unlike any other. For over 30 years, tourists have flocked to the tundra to catch a glimpse of polar bears in their natural habitat, thanks to Don Wikoski's unique creation, the Polar Rover. What started with a simple blue school bus has transformed into the 55-foot, six-wheel Polar Rover.
It's just an observation deck where you come out of the vehicle, and people do a lot of photography out here, and step out to have a breath of fresh air and see the bears up close. One of my guys suggested it one day. I guess he got tired of cleaning the snow off the deck and stuff like that, and suggested we look at doing something like this, and it worked out really well because the snow, as you can see, falls through, and it gives a really good view of the bears when they come up underneath. Basically, you've got a bear's eye view of a human right now. That's what they would be seeing. They're tilted forward because if you get excited and go run toward the front, go see a bear, bonk your head on the window. This way here, they can walk up and look straight down at all the animals, get a really good view of what's in front of the vehicle. Automatic transmission, power steering, all the luxuries.
Adult polar bears can reach over 11 feet when standing on their hind legs and are always on the lookout for their next meal.
I've had bears big enough that they had their whole head right up high enough that if I didn't shut the window, he would have been able to easily stick his head right in. Some bears are just absolute monsters.
I'm under contract to return you all to your loved ones, just as I found you. So please make sure that everything is always near your person, not ever hanging out. We don't ever want those beautiful bears to associate us as a food source.
Don's sister Val is a seasoned Polar Rover driver.
I have been driving a Polar Rover this is my 19th season. These machines are incredible. They are mechanically inspected top to bottom, front to back, every day. We drive the same Rovers each year, so you get to know what sounds right, what feels right. My favorite thing about this is getting to drive the vehicle. I am a huge fan. I think everybody should get to do this. It's an amazing experience.
The business is truly a family affair, and Don's son Kyle has been driving and working on Polar Rovers for most of his life. He's seen it all and knows exactly what makes these vehicles work and what the problem is when they don't.
Everything is more complicated in the cold. Everything breaks in the cold. Every line, every fitting, everything you imagine. When you start getting down minus 40, everything doesn't like it. So it's a huge concern, and these things are built to take it. And that's just from years of freezing your fingers and your hands outside trying to work on stuff, right? And you just try to find a way so you don't have to.
The Polar Rovers can also be used as a maintenance vehicle because out here on the tundra, you have to do everything for yourself, like fill up your water tanks from nature's source. The Polar Rover is also the sole source of transportation to this, a lodge that allows people to live among the wildlife.
We have a mobile lodge out on the tundra. and we have 30 guests out there, and they stay on the lodge. There's kitchen cars, generator cars, propane cars, and it's all mobile, so it's one of the largest mobile homes in the world.
Situated within the highest polar bear density in the world, the lodge looks almost like a colony on the moon. It's designed to roll out onto a small spit of land that juts out into the Hudson Bay, giving guests a chance to literally be surrounded by northern nature.
We had to make it so it could be moved every year out to the wildlife management area and then back in. It's about the length of a football field when it's all set up. So it pulls apart in 5 pieces, 6 including the propane tanks, and it's dragged like a big wagon train.
Traveling the length of the lodge is like moving between train cars, from the sleepers to the lounge to the kitchen and dining room. At full capacity, it can accommodate 34 staff and guests. Once the trip begins, guests have to remain on board for the duration. This is a wildlife management area. The only ones who get to walk around here are the animals.
I think the craziest thing I ever seen was when we had 80+ bears around that lodge, and it was kind of an eerie feeling. It was, you know, you're safe, but it was still to see that many animals, it was incredible.
When Don Wachowski built his lodge, he used the recycled parts of old military vehicles in Churchill's scrap heap. Up here, where everything is expensive, junk suddenly has potential.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what he's done. Unless you're there when one's being built, nobody understands how much work it really was. Especially for Dad at the time, because he was working a full-time job and doing that. He literally brought in an aluminum welder, taught himself how to weld, and then built machines. The whole thing's ludicrous, and he was younger than me when he did that.
The entire blueprint for the Polar Rover only exists in one place: Don's head.
To be honest with you, there are no drawings of anything that I've built. There's no formal plans or anything like that. There are some pretty crude drawings that we've done. A lot of my employees that work for me to help me build this stuff, I mean, they come up with some great ideas, and we try to make them all work out and pitch in and just build them. It is nice to see the people, you know, their faces and stuff like that when they experience that out there. You know, this is wilderness. It's been over a period of 30 years getting this all dialed in how we want it, but I think we're finally getting pretty close, but it can always improve.
With no roads to connect the remote villages that border the Arctic Circle, there's just one plane that's tough enough to stand up to the elements. In the Canadian North, the frozen tundra stretches from sea to sea, and the subarctic temperatures make it one of the coldest places on the planet. With no network of roads providing access to remote corners in this Arctic landscape, it often means there's only one way in and out: air travel. The city of Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories is just 250 miles from the Arctic Circle and home to Air Tindy, where their fleet of Twin Otter airplanes is for many in the north the only connection to civilization.
Good. Check. Line of checks complete. I have takeoff checks to go. Okay.
In a place that has an average temperature below freezing for 9 months of the year.
Flaps.
Flaps 20 indicating.
Check.
Takeoff and landing a Twin Otter is a true feat of engineering.
Anytime we're out looking for a place to land on a frozen lake or a river, you're always looking for the section of lake that'll work best, and most of the time it's a short area Sometimes you only have 1,000 feet or less to work with, so you really got to hit your spot there.
A landing strip at least 6,000 feet long is considered adequate for aircraft weighing less than 200,000 pounds. But for airplanes servicing remote communities in the Arctic, that amount of runway is rare. Its ability for short takeoff and landing, referred to as STOL, is what sets the Twin Otter apart.
We're typically operating out of a 1,500-foot strip here, which is lots of room. We only end up using about half of that.
Not only was a Twin Otter designed specifically to be able to take off and land on nearly any type of terrain, more importantly, it was built to do so in extremely tight spaces.
There's lots of Twin Otter strips around the Arctic that are 500 feet, 20 knots of wind. You can be airborne in a couple hundred feet.
Equipped with twin turboprop engines and a high rate of climb, it can take off and land with very little runway, due primarily to the shape and size of its wings.
The main thing is the aspect ratio of the wing is huge. The thick leading edge helps with lift. The thicker your wing and the longer your wing, the more lift you can produce. So you have a 65-foot wingspan on this aircraft, which really helps with creating lift to get off the ground quickly. So you have a high pressure underneath and a low pressure on top. The more curved your wing is and the farther it has to go, the more lift you can produce. But you create a lot of drag in the creation of lift. So the more lift, the more drag, which means it's a slow-speed aircraft.
The Twin Otter was not designed for speed. Instead, it was built to brave extreme weather and challenging terrain. One of the keys to the Twin Otter's longevity and durability is the simplicity of its design.
Inside the nose, we have most of the avionics equipment on this aircraft. It's a pretty dependable engine. Almost never have problems with them. They made now almost 1,000 of these planes, and lots of them are still flying today because of that.
The Twin Otters get regular maintenance throughout the year, and every half-decade, each aircraft gets a full service checkup. Currently, Crew Chief Alex Harrington and his team are working on the oldest one in their fleet, built in 1969.
We're doing the 5-year inspection, so everything essentially comes out so we can look at all the main structure, including this frame station right here. Here we have a bell crank with aileron control cables. So everything's mechanical in this, with a little bit of hydraulics where you need it.
Though the Twin Otter works as well as it did when it was made over 50 years ago, some concessions to modern technology have been added to aid the pilots during flight.
This is an old aircraft, but we still do need to keep up with the time. So the pilots actually fly with iPads. All the flight charts are on the iPad. So we've had some things modified in the aircraft, such as the mounts. And then some of the other things that we've done that weren't factory is we have 2 GPSs in here. We have a traffic system so pilots know where all the other aircraft are around them as well.
Ironically, it's the modern additions that have proven the least durable.
The thing pilots most commonly break, they get older, they never have it at the right angle.
Tablet holders aside,
Check.
in a Twin Otter that has been operating for over 50 years, there are very few mechanical issues.
Commercially, I don't think anything comes close to the Twin Otter as far as the load it can carry and how you can configure it and the places it'll go.
Its dependable design allows it to endure some of the most extreme temperatures and conditions on the planet, making it the ideal passenger and cargo transport to some of the most inaccessible places in the Arctic. Out in the wilderness, emergency rescue options are few and far between. But thanks to the Twin Otter, lives are being saved in the Arctic and across the world. In the Arctic, remote outposts rely on the Twin Otter to connect them to civilization.
In the wintertime, it can be drill camps, prospector tents, all their equipment, everything they need to live out in the bush for however long they're going to be there.
Captain Peter Pender and his crew are touching down at Blatchford Lake Lodge, a year-round snowmobiling and fishing destination awaiting this extreme ice machine's load of fresh supplies. The Twin Otter is the lodge's only lifeline to civilization, bringing in guests and provisions to its residents.
We can take all types of freight, so we move skidoos, we move ATVs, fuel drums, propane, groceries.
You'll start over there.
You name it and it goes in.
Oh yeah. Turkey.
For this lodge, it's mainly moving tourists out. We bring out all their groceries, fuel they need, anything they need to run the lodge.
One of the key features that makes the Twin Otter one of the most adaptable and commercially successful planes in the wilderness is its landing gear, which allows it to touch down in all types of terrain.
When you want to land on the snow or ice, it's a hydraulic lever that you activate in the cockpit here, and it will drop the skis, and there's a bucket comes under the wheel, and it turns it into a ski.
The wheel-ski combination is just one of many different landing gear options that make the Twin Otter such a versatile airplane.
Those skis aren't made to do what these skis are capable of. So these are for ice strips and snow, like deep powder snow. And they'll keep this plane at 12,500 pounds above the snow without sinking. We have our Tundra tire. That's for our extreme operations. So these run at 15 PSI. So very low tire pressure, gives you lots of flotation, whether it's sand or snow.
The Twin Otter can manage extreme terrain and also some of the most extreme conditions.
Well, you're dealing with cold weather, minus 30, 40 range, even down to minus 50 at times. So it's a dependable airplane that with the turbines on it performs really well.
And it's this dependability in the coldest and harshest environments on the planet that make the Twin Otter the go-to service vehicle for emergency medical evacuations throughout the Arctic.
A large part of our work is the medevac operations of the North. So we fly into fly-in-only communities. We bring all of the supplies and people in that way.
If you were on your snowmobile and you crashed on a lake and you needed help, this plane could come get you with a crew of medics and a med pack on board.
And in 2016, the Twin Otter's durability was put to the test when two support crew members of the National Science Foundation required emergency medical evacuation from an Antarctic research station at the South Pole in the dead of winter. The call went out for the one aircraft most qualified to do the job. After arriving in southern Chile, the Twin Otter made the treacherous journey in 24-hour darkness to the South Pole station, enduring temperatures approaching 90 degrees below zero. Withstanding the most extreme winter weather, the crew successfully piloted the Twin Otter over 1,500 miles to complete the rescue mission and bring the injured crew members back to a hospital in southern Chile for treatment. To those who service the North, the legacy of this extreme ice machine can't be overstated.
They last the cold, they last to the warms. They work in summer, they work in winter. Most reliable airplanes that we have.
It's tough. It deals with a lot up in these conditions in the Arctic. A lot of places would never have gotten built up here if it wasn't for planes like the Twin Otter. It's not too many planes that can do the job this plane does.
In the frozen country of Norway, the population is faced with ever-present snow and limited access. There's one machine extreme enough to take on the challenge. This Scandinavian country has some of the most extreme geography and severe winter conditions in the world. Nowhere is that more true than on the Oslo-Bergen train line that connects Norway's two largest cities through the harsh mountain terrain. Considered one of the most scenic rail journeys in Europe, the line is vital for transport, tourism, and commerce. Freight and supplies move along the railway year-round. For the people in the towns and villages that line the route, the train is the only reliable link with the rest of the country. But ice and snow are the railway's biggest enemy. Trains are regularly de-iced to prevent freezing, but keeping ice off the tracks is essential to preventing derailments. And it's up to this extreme ice machine, the EP01S Snowblower, to keep the trains running. It's essentially the biggest snowblower you've ever seen. A locomotive with two massive front-mounted rotary blowers that are powered by two 750 horsepower diesel engines. The forceful blades cut through the snow, funneling it to the chutes. This mighty machine can displace 16,000 tons of snow per hour, clearing the rails and keeping Norway open for business. It's early morning, and train engineer Per Arne Haga is getting ready for a long workday behind the controls of the EP01S.
It's an old machine from 1976, and it's working great since. It's a powerful machine, and it keeps the mountain passes of the railroad open here in the west.
After a quick systems check, he's ready to tackle the harsh conditions.
When you're moving 53 tons of raw steel and a lot of horsepower, you feel kind of like a champion.
Today, railroad veteran Erling Nesby will ride shotgun and operate the snowblower, while Per Arne pilots the locomotive.
Here can be much snow. We come out here.
They're rolling through the Hallingskarvet mountain range to clear out snow that has fallen onto the tracks overnight.
This is the control center of this snowblower. You got the driver here on this desk with a throttle, so you can regulate the throttle of the machine. And then you got the snowblower operator on that side. Driver can also single-handedly operate it if necessary, and control the blower with the controls here. It was a lot of snow here, and if we were not here doing this patrol and clearing the snow, it will build up under the trains.
And interrupting train traffic isn't an option in this part of the world. The ride is a vital extreme ice machine in Norway. This 53-ton beast is built for a single purpose: to tackle any amount of snow.
The whole blower is built up with two separated blowers, which are mounted on a hydraulic frame that you can regulate 1 meter out sideways. And then you got these wings on the side. You take those wings out, you get another meter. So you're about 5 meters you can clear snow.
The blowers can be extended to open a path 10 feet wider than a passenger train. Snow is drawn up into tunnels on either side of the train, known as impellers. The openings are covered with massive fan blades to help draw in the snow and push it through giant hydraulically operated discharge chutes.
It's the wind from here. Then we like to take the snow this way, with the wind.
While sub-zero temperatures gust outside, The operators sit in a climate-controlled cab which keeps them comfortable and warm during the long hours and the bone-numbing temperatures. The operators have to be vigilant, because piloting this snowblower is a 24-hour-a-day job.
The railroad is important, and it's pretty necessary part of the west to east transport. It's necessary to keep it open.
While the HB1500S snowblower can cut through 16,000 tons of snow per hour, this extreme ice machine also has a secret weapon for getting out of tricky situations. The survival of the Norwegian economy depends on keeping the rail system open. Per Arne Haga and Erling Nesby are clearing a critical rail line between Bergen and Oslo. And the only way to do that is the HB1500S snowblower, a train-mounted turbine snow removal machine that keep the tracks clear, the rails safe, and the major cities connected through the mountains of Norway. Their destination is the area around Finse station. This is the highest point in the Oslo-Bergen line. At 4,058 feet in the West Mountains, this region is known for extreme conditions with snowfall on the tracks 8 months of the year.
When it first starts to snow and blow, the wind gets a hold of a lot of snow, and it will build up. And this mountain ain't forgiving. This machine is essential for keeping it open.
A key feature of the HB1500S are these cutter knives that are at the front line of the blower's fight against ice and snow.
The lower blade cuts ice and hard-packed snow. And you got this on the top. If you got an avalanche or something, it cuts it up, feeds it into the impeller.
Once the snow is drawn in, the chutes have enough force to displace snow over 130 feet away. That kind of power comes in handy when the snow reaches higher than the top of the entire snowblower.
It's not unusual about 4 or 5 meters high snow here in the mountains. So you have good use of this when it's high snow.
The blowers at the front of this massive workhorse do all the heavy lifting, but at the back, a small plow does the important fine-tuning.
The blower removes all the snow above 6 centimeters off the top of the rail, and then the last remaining part of the snow, that's taken care of by this plow.
The back plow breaks up and removes the leftover snow in the center of the tracks, preventing a coat of ice from forming on the rails.
If you don't remove it, it will cause a derailing.
While clearing the snow around Finse, Per Arne gets a call.
Ja, da har du et godstog som kommer bak oss. Å ja, såpass ja. Takk skal du ha. Hei. That was the train leader. He's supervising so he can coordinate the trains.
A freight train is headed straight for the snowblower, and they need to get out of the way. South of the station, Erling hops out and flips a switch on a control box, which will redirect the snowblower to a side track. Trains can't make three-point turns, but this extreme ice machine has a secret weapon for getting out of tricky situations. Because it can turn on a dime. Like a tank rotating its gun turret, the machine spins 180 degrees on its own base. Now Perarne can return to the station on the side track and wait safely for the freight train to pass.
It's a good feeling to know that the job you are doing is keeping the trains, both freight train and the other trains with persons, make them come safely home.
The Snowblower clears roughly 93 miles of track every day. Sometimes blankets of snow will fall, and wind will push deep drifts onto the tracks over and over. It's a battle without end. But after 40 years on the line, this extreme ice machine keeps winning. In the frozen landscape of the North, the climate is an ever-present danger, whether it be by air, land, or rail. Human survival has come to depend on these extreme ice machines.
This is a six-wheel drive polar bear viewing machine. We take people out to the tundra to see polar bears in their wild state.
Now, the length of this is 55 feet, and it stands at 13 foot 6 inches to the top of the roof. Keeps people out of reach of the bears, keeps the bears safe and the people safe. Automatic transmission, power steering, all the luxuries.
Commercially, I don't think anything comes close to the Twin Otter as far as the load it can carry and how you can configure it and the places it'll go. Anytime we're out looking for a place to land on a frozen lake or a river, you're always looking for the section of lake that'll work best, and most of the time it's a short area. Sometimes you only have 1,000 feet or less to work with.
It's a pretty dependable engine. Almost never have problems with them. They made now almost 1,000 of these planes, and lots of them are still flying today because of that.
They last to the cold, they last to the warms. They work in summer, they work in winter. Most reliable airplanes that we have.
It's a powerful machine, and it keeps the mountain passes of the railroad open here in the west. It's a good feeling to know that the job you are doing is keeping the trains, both freight train and the other trains with persons, make them come safely home. The railroad is important, and it's a pretty necessary part of the west to east transport.